Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode. My name is Stephen and I'm the host of the Going Somewhere podcast. And I hope you're having a great week. If you're driving to work or working out, wherever you find yourself, I hope this episode is encouraging to you, that it brings you some joy and that it helps you along the way. When I think about these episodes and the guests I want to invite on, I'm always thinking about you. I'm always thinking about just the journey, the ambiguity that is young adulthood. There's so many big decisions and life changes. And so we talk a lot about spiritual things. We talk a lot about the financial things. We talk a lot about community and relationships. But today we're going to take a little bit of a twist. We're going to be talking about cooking. Yes, cooking. I know some of you are like squirming in your seat because you hate that word so much. And I think the reality is that every single one of us has to learn this to an extent. I know I have a grandparent who, when his wife passed away in her 60s, he had to learn how to make a sandwich. And I think some of us are on a crash course for that lifestyle as well. And so I think if we can get ahead of it in our 20s, it can be a blessing to us. But I know it can be intimidating. I know some of us just hate cooking. We'd rather buy takeout. And so that's why I'm excited to introduce you to our guest, who is Bri McKoy. And Bri is somebody who wasn't like a culinary student. She wasn't like somebody who was at 6 and just fell in love with cooking with her grandma. She was actually in her mid-20s, like a lot of you are, when she realized that I'm going to go broke if I don't learn how to cook because I'm buying all this takeout. And so I'm excited for you to hear her journey, her story, but also just get a glimpse into her new book, which is called A Cook's Book, which is just a simple cookbook for everyday people that'll help you not only just like endure it, but embrace it and enjoy life in the kitchen. So without further ado, let's hop into today's episode with Bri. But first, I want to make sure that you remember, if you like this episode, if you think that it's adding value to your life, share it with somebody. Leave a comment on Instagram at goingsomewhere.podcast. Share a reel, whatever it is that's impactful to you, share it with the world around you. And if you haven't already, subscribe, leave a rating and review so more people can come across the podcast and listen to all the things that we talk about. So without further ado, now we're going to take it in to our episode with Bri McKoy. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. Today I'm joined by Bri McKoy. How are you doing, Bri?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this conversation. For our audience, it might be a little outside of the box, but I'm really excited to talk about your life and just what you're doing. So do you mind just kind of giving us a little bit of a sneak peek behind the curtain? Who is Bri McKoy?
Absolutely. I call myself an accidental home cook because I did not want to learn how to cook, nor did I know how to cook. It was never a passion or love of mine, but I found myself in a situation in my mid-20s where, my husband was like, hey, let's not go into debt over takeout. Like, maybe not. And I was like, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to eat? Who's going to feed us? And so I really was like, we both decided, let's learn how to cook. And so I started to learn how to cook, which of course I had to start a blog because that's what you do when you
Obviously.
learn. Obviously. And then I wrote a book that was a food memoir all about how gathering around a table was really showing me how I could be more like Jesus to my neighbors. And that kind of coincided with me learning how to cook. And now I am publishing my first cookbook.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I feel like getting into cooking as a financial decision is just a great entry level place.
Exactly.
When you were like a little girl, what did you kind of think life would be like at this point? Like, what did you think you were going to be doing or all those things?
Oh, I thought I was going to be a teacher, actually. I was like, I am going to grow up and I'm going to be a teacher. And I even went to college to be a teacher. And then I did substitute teaching as kind of like, that was one of the, I guess, requirements. And
Okay.
the first day in the class, I was like, no, 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 no. I am not good. What I didn't know is I do love teaching and now I teach cooking, but I am not as great with teaching the little ones.
the little ones, they don't need to know how to cook yet. So
Yeah,
you're good.
exactly.
You're good.
Yeah.
That's amazing. No, but I really do think, for young adults, that is one of the intimidating everyday things. And, we talk a lot about the big stuff. We talk about, finding your job and getting married and these big decisions that happen in young adulthood. But also one of those things is like, mom and dad aren't cooking for me anymore. And it's way easier, like you said, to get takeout every night. And so I think it's one of those intimidating things that is so worthwhile talking about. What are some of the things that help people kind of overcome the intimidation of cooking in the first place?
I think the first thing and my entryway really is when we're learning something new, I think it's almost human nature to be like, I have to learn everything right now, all of it. And that's why it feels so overwhelming. And that's how I initially felt about cooking. Like, I don't even know how to chop an onion. I don't know what you mean when you say sear chicken. Like, I need you to tell me, what is a pinch of salt? What is a pinch of salt? Like, I need measurements. And so what I realized I needed to do is I needed to like take 20 steps back. And I just asked myself, like, what am I good at? Like, what am I good at in the kitchen? And I felt like my husband and I are really good at like making a yummy cocktail. And I was really good at pulling together like a delicious sauce. And so I was like, okay, you know what? We're going to buy a rotisserie chicken, like a pre-made rotisserie chicken, and have people over and we can give them a yummy cocktail or like I'll make a sauce for the chicken. It was
Yes.
just like pinpointing let's start with what I'm good at and then slowly like move from there. And so when you do something you're good at, you feel really successful at it and then you want to keep going. And
Right.
that's what for me.
Well, I'm good at like mac and cheese and chicken nuggets. We have 3 kids. So where do I start? I think that's such great advice though, of like, what are the things that don't stress you out in the kitchen and start there, you know?
Exactly.
When you were, a young adult. So I know your journey was kind of, I think you were 26 when you kind of discovered cooking and stepped into that
Yes.
world. So what was it like before that? Just take us back to kind of like 22-year-old Bri walking into the kitchen for dinner. What happened?
Oh, it was quite disastrous. Either I was doing salads. I actually lived with I had a roommate when I was like right out of college and she liked cooking. And so she had like all these pots and pans. I had no cooking things at all. I had like a plate and then a bowl and I would throw together like salads or I'd go buy pre-made stuff or it was like I would be waiting for on Mondays McDonald's used to do like $1 Big Macs and I would just be
Yes.
waiting. I was like, I'm gonna get that $1 Big Mac. That was me.
That was Bri. Okay, I feel like I can relate to that, and I think a lot of people probably can. And so I feel like one of the things in your book you said I lived 26 years without knowing how to cook, and I found this to be an important part of my DNA. I think it can be something that isn't just like wow, this is intimidating, but like I don't cook. I'm not a cook. How do you overcome maybe that mindset?
Oh, that one was really hard for me because I felt it almost felt empowering to me to be like, no, that's not, I don't do that. I do many things. I have many talents and gifts, but I don't do cooking. And really, what got me over it is what I did love is bringing people into my home. And I loved seeing what happened around the table when we gathered. I remember one of the first times early in our marriage, we had some single cadets over who hadn't had like a home cooked meal in a long time. And I served burnt Cornish hens. I don't know why I thought I should just make Cornish hens. I don't know why I thought but
That's
I was
amazing.
made home cooked meals. So I served dried out, burnt Cornish hens. And what happened at the table was so amazing. I mean, like the conversation and how cared for and served for they felt. And I was like, wait, this had nothing to do with my dried out chicken. And so I think I realized, like, well, maybe if I can just learn a few techniques, this isn't about cooking. This is about bringing people to the table. So I switched my mindset from like, it's not that I'm a cook, it's that I'm bringing people to the table.
That's cool. So it was kind of like the goal shifted from survival by cooking good food to I want to be a better friend and a host and hospitality. I think that's really helpful. I think my wife and I, we love having people in our home. And I feel like my wife is way better in this area, and she's got her like go-tos, and they're awesome. But I think that's the intimidating thing is like, and I think for some people it's why they don't host more, because they feel like that is, I don't want to let people down. Or, I remember we have a couple in our church that he owns a catering business, and we decided to have them over for dinner. And I've never like been more intimidated in my life. Jimmy D was coming over, and he makes his living making food. But I think it's those hurdles that, like you said, it kind of unlocks the benefits. So what have kind of been the benefits of you stepping into this and just kind of embracing that? And I know one is hospitality, but are there any other benefits you've discovered?
Yes, I feel like in the evening when it was time to start thinking about dinner, I usually was going into the kitchen like completely stressed out. I had no plan. I had no idea what I was cooking. And then usually the end result was something that wasn't delicious. And it was just like a really frustrating way to end my day of, and then there was a big mess in the kitchen. And so it was just not the vibe that I wanted for my
Right.
evenings. And so I realized when I learned just a few small techniques, like how to chop an onion or how to cook chicken in a pan without it sticking, I not only eliminated stress and became more efficient in the kitchen, I actually found joy in the kitchen. And I think that's something that shocked me, that like learning can sometimes lead to joy. And so I just learned a few things, and then I was fine. Like I was getting excited about chopping my onion. I would like scream when I would flip my chicken over and it wasn't sticking to my pan. And I was like, this is great. This is fun.
That's so good. I do feel like, everybody in the kitchen, they need some tools too. And you were just talking about like the chicken sticking to the pan, because sometimes that's user error and sometimes that's equipment error. What are some
Exactly.
of your kind of go-to, like you need to have this when you're starting out, in just kind of this cooking adventure?
Yes. Well, when I was starting out, I actually ended up talking to a chef and asked that question, like, what do I need? I'm brand new in the kitchen. And the first thing she said was, you need a high quality sharp knife. And I was like, under no circumstances will I be holding a sharp knife. I don't know how to use it, and I'll cut my finger off. And she explained to me that a dull knife is actually more dangerous in the kitchen because it can slip more easily instead of like a sharp knife can go straight through an onion. But a dull knife, it's way more able to slip and cut. And so I was like, okay, a sharp knife. So I got myself a sharp knife, and I'm telling you, it changed everything for me, because when you go from like sawing through an onion for 20 minutes to chopping one in 5, you're like, wait, I can do this every evening. Like I can get dinner to the table. And then I feel like the other thing were just some like kind of basic tools, like a garlic roller, which you just put your clove of garlic in there, and I call it the little coat on the garlic,
Yeah,
just
the
like
garlic
pops
coat.
right off. Yeah. It just comes off, like a garlic press, a citrus press, all these things that made tasks way more efficient. And then with a pan, what I did, because I think a pan is super important as you're trying to, learning how to cook, because you're going to be using that pan multiple nights a week.
Right.
And I decided I want to learn how to cook in an enamel cast iron pan, because again, the chef was like, they're amazing. So there's a learning curve there, but I think you just decide, like, I want to do nonstick, or I want to do cast iron, or and you learn your pan, and you commit to learning your pan, and it will change everything.
Learn the pan.
Learn the pan.
It's as easy as that. No, that's awesome. I think that's great advice. And, around here, there's lots of weddings in the summer, and you just get like all these things. And so that's usually what becomes like your kitchen set, is whatever was gifted to you. And it's 18 cookie sheets and all these different things. Have you found that there's like clutter that kind of makes it more difficult? Because I know that's how I am sometimes. It's like there's so much going on, and there's so many tools, and there's so many things. So how do you kind of deal with that?
Oh, that is such a great point, because I think also having too much like too many decisions can create paralysis. It's like sometimes it's best to just be like, I have my sharp knife and I have my pan, and we're going to make a meal. And for me, and I talk a lot about this in the cook's book, is there are a lot of great recommendations out there, like in cookbooks or in TV channels and things. But think about like what you need. Like I don't bake, so I don't have any baking tools.
Right.
Like I don't need them. Or, we're not huge smoke, like we don't smoke meats or do smoked meats, but someone who's really passionate about that might have like a whole setup. So I think it is just starting with like looking at your stuff and realizing like I've not used this muffin tin in 8 years or 2 years or whatever it is. And you might not need to throw it away, maybe just put it somewhere else and be like, let's see if I reach for that this year or whatever it is. And just get your kitchen to like, these are the things I know I'm using multiple times a week. Put them in places where you're going to want to reach for them. I used to have my heavy Dutch oven like on a high shelf where I couldn't reach it. And so I never made roasts. But when I pulled it down and put it like where I could reach it, I was making roasts multiple times a month, which a roast is a great meal. It feeds a lot of people.
Exactly. Another kitchen hack. That's amazing. You kind of talked about the decision paralysis, and I think obviously with the tools and stuff, and my audience that knows me really well is probably laughing so hard right now because they're like, Stephen, just shut up about cooking. You know nothing, But when it comes to like meal prepping and stuff like that, I think that's another one. If you, like you were talking about, if you walk into the kitchen at 5:30 after work, a long day of work, and you're like, okay, time to cook dinner, and you have no plan, you're gonna get takeout,
Oh,
nine
yeah.
times out of 10. And so,
Yep.
what are some of the things that you do and that you have done to kind of stay on top of that and to kind of make that whole thing tick?
Yes. Well, I definitely meal plan on Sundays usually. Um, well, actually, I review my plan on Sunday. I meal plan usually on Fridays because I am able to go to the grocery store on Friday. So like I will plan for the week coming up. If I don't have a meal plan, like you said, like it's not happening. And this is coming from someone who loves cooking. So I'm like, a meal plan is so key. And I'll do like a quick review. What frozen meat do we have in the freezer? What events do we have coming up? Are we having people over this week? Do I need to make a dish that feeds more people? And I will just create my meal plan, go grocery shopping, and then we put the meal plan on the refrigerator. And Jeremy and I both know about it. Like we both know if you were having tacos on Monday or whatever. And I think seeing it there also kind of reinforces like you've made this plan, you've gotten these groceries. I also, if I am dealing with frozen meat, I'll put timers in my calendar to take the meat out. Like, okay,
Okay.
you're having bolognese on Wednesday. You need to get the ground beef, on Tuesday night, a little alert will go off and it'll be like, get the ground beef out of the freezer because I will
Genius.
forget.
Genius. No, that's so good. I when it comes to the meal planning and stuff, like I'm not our primary, kitchen person. I do the grilling and I definitely help out. But what I've realized though is even though my wife enjoys it and it's not something that she like despises or anything, like when I can help out and contribute, I think it's a big deal. So I think, what are your tips for maybe that non-primary cook? Like, okay, you're not living alone on your own. Like you don't need this to survive as much, but maybe to thrive in your marriage or to thrive in your roommate situation. So how would you kind of speak to them
Okay, so
or to
I
me?
realized you're like, tell me the
Tell me,
secret.
yeah, come on.
I realized that I was cooking dinner like Sunday through Wednesday. And then on Thursday, it didn't matter if I had a meal plan. It didn't matter if I had groceries. Like I was done. Like I was like, I have cooked a meal every night from Sunday to Wednesday. And so we did two things. The first one is we declared Thursday night takeout night because I was like, we're doing takeout night every Thursday anyway. It was like, so why? And then groceries are going bad. So so I think like looking at the season of life that I was in, because sometimes it changes. Sometimes Wednesday needed to be the takeout night. But I always knew like a break was coming and that helped. But also, Jeremy decided to become an expert in pizza. And I think if your partner can be an expert in one dish that you can make every week, that really helps. So he makes pizza every Friday. So I technically kind of have like 2 days off where it's like, we're getting takeout this night and
Right.
Jeremy and no one, and who gets tired of pizza?
No one.
No one. So it
Domino's
really helped.
Domino's does pizza for us every Friday night right now, but it's costing more money than we want.
Yes, yes. I know that we like love we've been doing like Friday night pizza nights for so long. And we were like, we got to figure this, we got to crack this code. Like we got to figure out how to make our own pizza dough.
That's so good. I
Yeah.
when you kind of accomplish something in the kitchen though, it feels so good. Like it's kind of like, well, you actually just posted something on your Instagram, which is great, by the way. But the egg, peeling the egg with the spoon, and I've
Yes.
never done it, but it's so satisfying, just the look of it. But I think when you like accomplish a dish and you bring something and people like it, or it feels really good. I remember I was in, well, I wasn't in college. I was after college, but I was still single, and it was like a potluck, and those stressed me out, to the max. Or like Super Bowl parties and stuff.
Yep.
And I decided to, talk to some people, and I brought enchiladas. I got a recipe. I followed it. I made the enchiladas, and then I just like set it there, and everybody just kept talking about the enchiladas, and I couldn't stay quiet. Like I wasn't like pat on the back. I was like, those are mine. Yep, I did those. But I think, that's one of those things too, is sometimes it's just, this is me making food for me or the people in my home. But other times it's like, okay, I want to go to this party and I don't want to bring chips anymore. So what are some of your like go to, hey, you've got a Super Bowl party, you've got a potluck, coming up. What are some of the go
Yes.
tos that everybody can throw in their back pocket?
Well, one thing that I think sounded and seemed intimidating to me, and now I bring it to every Super Bowl party, and it is always a hit, is chicken wings. Like they are so easy. I used to be like, I am not making chicken wings. They're so easy. I have a really simple sauce that goes with them, and I will take them to a party, and people will be like, I don't like chicken wings. And they'll taste it and they'll be like, I will have more chicken wings. And I'm like, yes, yes, you will. So, and it's just, I did not realize how simple it was to get like, and this recipe is in my book. Um, it's so simple to get like them really crispy and then to have like a really delicious sauce on them. So that is one. I also have an enchilada recipe, which is like, it's so easy. The flavors are so good in an enchilada casserole every time. Every time people are like, what's the recipe? What is this?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
In your book, I know there's lots of recipes, but what else does the book have to offer too? Because I think, just getting to read about it and look at it more, it's not just here's a list of 18 recipes or 40 recipes. So what else can you expect from a cook's book?
Right. Well, when I set out to write it, I really was like, I want this. Like, what was the cookbook that I needed when I started to learn how to cook? There's so many cookbooks out there, and a lot of them are just like very recipe forward. And I was, like I said, like, I didn't know what seared chicken meant. So when the recipe said, like, sear your chicken, I was like, what does that mean? And so I set out to really write a book that was like, I'm going to teach you the techniques that laid the foundation that made me feel like a confident home cook. And then all of the recipes reinforce those techniques. So it's like you learn how to properly heat your pan and cook food without sticking. That's a technique I teach. And then there's like 6 recipes that reinforce that technique so that you can actually feel good and confident about that. It's the same with knife skills. Like I have a section and I go through like knife skills, how to care for your knife, what kind of knives to get. And then we cook, 5 or so recipes that reinforce knife skills. So my hope is that we're not just becoming recipe readers, we're also learning how to cook.
So good. And enjoy cooking. I know
Yes.
that's one of the, I think, the promises of the book is that you can actually learn to enjoy it. And that's the part that I'm like, okay, this is for me now. And so no, that's so good. I worked for a nonprofit for a while, and one of the things that we had was we had a mobile food truck that we delivered free food. And I was, I got to help out every once in a while. It wasn't my main job, but I would get to go on the truck and serve, or I would get to go into the kitchen and prep with our chef. And she's the one who like taught me knife skills and stuff like that. And we definitely faked, some finger chopping with our executive director a couple different times. But I remember just having somebody actually to kind of show me, and like the whole like cutting with your knuckles, like all those things. Like I was just a finger grabber, just like I grab it by the chunk and start cutting. And I feel like even those things were like, oh, this isn't as hard as I thought, or this isn't as difficult as I thought. And so I love the practicality. And, I could have like a world-class chef on this podcast, and a lot of it would just go over our heads. And I think what you do so well is you help the everyday person have confidence in this area of their life. So I just love what you're doing and all about it. It's so good.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate that because that's what I was going for. I was like, I don't want anyone to feel intimidated by like I want to make this so practical and so for the everyday person who's like, I don't even know if I have a kitchen. Let me go check.
I've heard of it.
I've heard of it.
Are you a fan of The Bear? That show
Oh,
on
yes.
Hulu?
Yes. For some reason, I was envisioning an actual bear,
Are you a fan of The
but you
Bear?
mean a TV show.
Yeah. Like Winnie the Pooh. I was
I
talking
love
about
that
Winnie the
show.
Pooh. Okay. That's so good. It is
I love
very
him. Love his work.
it's very satisfying though. Like just the sounds, and I see it
I
all the
love
time
it.
on Instagram of people saying like, all right, I'm leaving my career to go become a chef, because it is like when you see it and when you can taste it or feel it, like there's something about it that just grabs you and grabs hold of you. But as we kind of come to a close here, are there any other things that you would want to share, to that young adult that is facing a life ahead of them, 60 years of kitchen work and cooking and eating to survive? Uh, any last things you'd want to share with them?
Yes, I would say it is worth it. It is worth it to learn just a few foundational skills. I think about 26-year-old Bri, and I'm like, man, if she did not take just a little bit of time to learn a few cooking techniques, you know, years later, I would still be going into the kitchen so frustrated, so overwhelmed, burning things more often than I should be. And so, if you can just like take a just learn a few skills. It doesn't have you don't have to be world class. You don't have to be starting a food channel or a blog, but just a few recipes even. And maybe you start small, where you say, this year I'm going to learn 5 really solid recipes, and that's where you start. And it's going to be worth it in the long run.
So good. I did have another question that I forgot to ask earlier, but time. I think that's another big hurdle is like, I don't have an hour, or I've plans tonight, or I don't want to be doing dishes until 7:30, or whatever the case is. So kind of how do you address that one?
So I really there there's kind of 2 ways that I address it. The first way is I realized a few years ago that it didn't make sense to me that I was cooking a full meal starting at like 6. And I think even someone had said to me, it's like you are at 10 p.m. deciding you're going to run a marathon. Like, why are you doing that? And so because I do have this luxury. And so for people who do have the ability to start things earlier in the day, like let's say the meal comes with a sauce, make that sauce earlier in the day, prep veggies earlier in the day. Kendra Adachi, she wrote the book The Lazy Genius Kitchen, which is also fantastic. And something that she cues people up to do is like, what can I do right now that will make cooking easier later? So that could be like washing the vegetables all on Sunday, or chopping your onion in the morning and storing it. So when you get your saute pan out, you're just throwing it in. And then I also realized I could bring the full meal together like at 4 p.m. Then like if it was a casserole or if it was a soup or whatever it was. And then basically 2 hours later, I'm just pulling it out to reheat it. And so I'm not I think a lot of us are going into the kitchen exhausted because we've lived a full day as a full human. And now we're like, I gotta cook a full meal.
Right.
But if you can just do a few things, like either earlier in the day or even start the cooking process earlier, then it becomes so much more manageable.
Awesome. Awesome. One of the questions I ask all the guests is, what is one piece of advice you would give to your 22-year-old self?
That is so good. Well, first of all, I would just not advice, but I would be like, you're going to be really shocked. You're going to love cooking. um, I think I probably would say don't lose um don't lose focus on what God is doing in your life, and pay attention. Like, pay attention. Because I think it was or it was easy for me to it so much felt so random. Like I was like, this feels completely random. I don't understand what's happening in my life. Like doors are opening that I don't understand, doors are closing that I don't understand. And yeah, I think I would have had a lot more peace if I was just like, don't lose focus and pay attention.
So good. Hey, thanks so much, Bri, for coming on. I know our podcast guests or listeners are going to love you and love this conversation. They're going to love your book, A Cook's Book. Can you just tell us where to find your book, where to find more about you and all the things that you're doing?
Yes. Like we've noted, my name's Bri McKoy, and I'm on Instagram. Mostly it's BRIMCKOY.
We'll link it too. We'll link it. Yeah.
And then the Cook's Book will be out August 29th, and it's sold wherever books are sold. You can get it online, you can get it in bookstores, and I can't wait.
Awesome. Well, we can't either. And, next time you come on the podcast, we'll just have you cook in front of us and, just have a great conversation that way. But no, thanks so much, Bri. Appreciate you. Good luck with your book and everything else that's going on.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. This is great.